Forbidden places you will never visit. Just imagine you're on a fishing boat in the Bay of Bengal. You've had a successful day and it's time to get back to shore, when all of a sudden a typhoon forms right in front of your face over the water. And before you know it, your boat has been flipped and you are essentially lost at sea. Your entire crew is gone and you're holding onto a floating board for dear life. Your energy is low from kicking and screaming, and you pass out, clinging to this board. You wake up later, looking at a clear sky, and you notice you're not in the water anymore. You're on the beach, but you don't know what beach you're at because you weren't near land. You cough up some water and start to sit up when you realize a small bunch of blobs in the distance. You see them approach and you realize that it's people, but not people you've seen before. The closer you get, the more you realize that these people are barely clothed and wielding sticks and bows. Did you time travel? Unfortunately not. You have just washed up on North Sentinel Island. North Sentinel Island is the first location on this list, and it is likely one of the most well-known forbidden places in the entire world. Oh, and as far as the fisherman who washed up on the beach, yeah, his skull is now a pendant for one of the Sentinelese people. North Sentinel Island is one of the Andaman Islands in the Indian archipelago in the Bay of Bengal, which also includes some other smaller islands as well. What makes North Sentinel Island so unique is the fact that it's solely occupied by a voluntarily isolated indigenous tribe, who are believed to have been there for over 60,000 years. These people are known as the Sentinelese, and they have made their wishes known by force, specifically by killing anybody who tries to contact them or even come close. They have made their message so clear that the Indian Navy patrols the area around the North Sentinel Island to protect it from people trying to enter it. And the Indian government does not prosecute any Sentinelese people for killing people that try to step ashore. That's insane that this uncontacted tribe is essentially immune to the law. The Sentinelese have not only attacked people that have stepped on shore, but have also repeatedly attacked approaching vessels, whether those be fishing boats or simply any sort of low-flying helicopter or plane in the range of their bows and arrows. The story I told at the beginning of this segment is actually inspired by real events that took place in 2006. During this time, Sentinelese islanders killed 2 fishermen whose boat drifted ashore. And like the intro story, this approach wasn't even intentional. Although, speaking of intentionally visiting the Sentinelese, in 2018, a 26-year-old man named John Chu, who was an American Christian missionary, tried on 3 separate attempts to visit the North Sentinelese people, likely to convert them to Christianity, but unfortunately on his 3rd trip, which he was successfully able to approach these people, he was unsurprisingly murdered, which is obviously unfortunate. But this young man was warned by the Indian government and other authorities. In 1956, there was an Islands Protection of Aboriginal Tribes regulation that was put in place that restricted any approach closer than 5 nautical miles, which is essentially anywhere within a 10-kilometer radius of the island. The biggest reason why this regulation was put in place is to protect the Sentinelese people from mainland diseases. Due to the severity of the isolation of North Sentinel Island, they have almost no immunity to any modern-day disease or germ that may be on you or I right now. So if you were to visit North Sentinel Island, there's a very likely chance that even spending time around them, breathing near them, shaking one of their hands, could lead to the death of the entire population of the Sentinelese people simply by spreading germs. North Sentinel Island is a forbidden location that I personally don't intend on breaking any rules to visit. But what if fishing wasn't your speed? Perhaps you are more interested in agriculture, specifically Chinese agriculture. The year is 1974, and you are simply on your farm. And what's a good farm without a well? So, you start digging a well. However, this day was different. As you start digging, you notice something that is about to uncover one of the largest excavation projects of all time. And then you go deeper and you notice hardened fragments of terracotta. And then you notice bronze arrowheads. And then terracotta bricks. Well, in that case, you just discovered the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first Qin emperor of China. These artifacts were submitted to the government, and shortly after, archaeologists arrived. And although they were curious and interested about the artifacts that may have laid underground, they were not at all prepared for what they were about to find. What they found was a massive necropolis, the size of a small city, with a plethora of artifacts, weapons, vehicles, and most famously, terracotta soldiers. There is estimated to be over 8,000 terracotta soldiers in total, but that actual figure is unknown because this mausoleum is still not fully excavated and may never be. Keep in mind, this excavation has been going on since 1974 and still continues to this day. This mausoleum was built from 246 to 208 BC. The mausoleum mirrored the city of Jianyang with an inner and outer city structure. And although this outer and inner city structure where the terracotta soldiers have been found has began to be excavated, one place that has never been touched was the tomb itself. This tomb is at the very center of the complex, and it is very large. In case the thousands of terracotta soldiers were not enough of a sign, the late Qin Shi Huang did not want people entering his tomb. At least, not without a fight, I guess. So I suppose that begs the question, why did the government keep excavating? Well, the 3 reasons they listed publicly were the following. One was the fact that this area was a seismic zone, and they needed to remove these historic artifacts to protect them. The next reason was for tourism, to potentially make it something that people could visit and appreciate. And the third reason was to prevent grave robbing, essentially theorizing that if they didn't take it, somebody else would. In case the 8,000 terracotta soldiers didn't make this obvious, this mausoleum is massive. The replicate inner city is over 2.5 kilometers in circumference, and the outer city is over 6.3 kilometers in circumference, which is insane for a mausoleum. Even the tomb itself is massive. It's believed to be 80 meters east to west and 50 meters north to south, and 15 meters tall on the inside. However, the interior height is debated. It is a very real possibility that we will never be able to know what's inside the tomb, simply because of limitations in archaeological abilities, specifically the risk of destroying so many other artifacts just to get inside the tomb. But we do have historical accounts of what is said to be inside the tomb, which is the following. The emperor's tomb is surrounded by rivers of liquid mercury, which was the emperor's immortality elixir of choice. Which, just quick side note, yeah, this emperor was literally drinking mercury to try to extend his life, which ironically ended up causing him to go crazy and die. But okay, back to the historical account. There is a domed ceiling representing celestial bodies made from pearls and precious gems. The floor has a design of the entire map of his empire. And besides all of his precious belongings and stunning architecture, there was of course claims of booby traps, specifically crossbow traps that would be activated if anybody tried to enter the tomb, which would result in them, of course, being shot and killed. Here's where things get interesting. These accounts were of course questionable, and archaeologists were suspicious. But after probing the soil near the tomb, it was confirmed that the mercury levels in the soil were 100 times over the normal level, giving some credibility to these historic claims. Which also gives credibility to the fact that there may be booby traps, which has essentially spooked archaeologists, as they believe these traps would be fully functioning, which I personally find hard to believe, but I also wouldn't risk it either. This tomb is listed as a World Heritage Site and is therefore protected by legal entities. But that's not the only reason why you're not able to go here. Unlike North Sentinel Island, which is relatively easy to visit if you have a boat or know somebody with a boat, the tomb of Qin Shi Huang is simply unable to be reached, at least to any regular person with reasonable means. What I mean is, of course, if you hypothetically had a bunch of dynamite, you could blow it up, but obviously that's not realistic. Or is it? No. Unless... Just kidding. Therefore, you're not only not allowed to visit it, you're also not able, making it a perfect entry for this list. Let's hope that you got your sea legs back, because we're hitting the water again. This time, we're going to a remote island intentionally, although it's not off the coast of India. This island is actually in the Arctic Circle. This island is known as Spitsbergen, and it's tucked away in the Arctic Svalbard archipelago. And if you're wondering why we're going here, it's primarily because of your passion for agriculture. Spitsbergen is the home of the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, and this seed vault is one of the most interesting places in the entire world, and is kind of an interesting take on the Doomsday Vault. In short, it's an ultra-secure facility with the sole purpose of being a safeguard for global crop diversity by storing duplicates of every known seed. This place is really just a sperm bank for plants, or other stuff like that. The Seed Vault is actually a partnership between the Norwegian government and Crop Trust, which is a genetic resource center, which sounds evil, but probably isn't. But it might be. This facility is epic, and if you like brutalist architecture, you are going to love this building. It's essentially a concrete slab sticking out the side of a mountain in the middle of an uninhabited Arctic wasteland. To me, it seems like a pretty cool place to store some stuff. The entire facility goes almost 400 feet into the side of a mountain, and a majority of this facility is kept at negative 18 degrees Celsius, as that is the recommended temperature to store seeds. I guess, I don't know, I'm not a seed expert. One unique failsafe about this facility that I think is pretty cool is the fact that even if all the refrigeration units failed today, the seed vault would still be completely protected because it is stored within permafrost, meaning that it's very well insulated and very cold. Now, if only the people that designed this designed the Death Star too. As of 2022, there is over 1.2 million unique types of seeds in this facility. And interestingly, and potentially somewhat obviously, this facility is not manned. It is autonomous, and I suppose that's a good thing considering the fact that it's literally in the middle of nowhere, always kept at deadly temperatures with basically nothing around you. This seed bank is a really unique modern invention that I think serves a genuine purpose that hopefully we will never need, but could very well serve a massive role in the development of humanity if it ever came to it. I think it goes without saying that this seed vault is completely off limits. Not only is it in an extremely remote location in a part of the world that's already hard to navigate and travel to, but the facility itself is extremely secure. So unfortunately, you won't be able to check out the cool seed collection, but that's okay. And you're a person of culture. Modern archives and architecture is cool, but you want history. You want to see some cool stuff and some old stuff. And for that exact reason, we're going to France. The date is September 12th, 1940, and you and your trusty dog are on a walk like any other day. Your dog notices a hole left by an uprooted tree, and you notice something rather interesting, but you don't bother at the moment. You go home and ponder on what you may have saw and decide that you have some unfinished business, and you return to that uprooted tree with 3 of your best friends. You begin digging, a common theme in this video I suppose, and notice that this uprooted tree has a lot below it. Specifically, a 15-meter deep cave shaft. You and your friends are brave, and you enter the cave and start exploring. And not only do you see some cool stalactites and stalagmites and light brights, but you also see interesting designs on the walls. Those designs were ancient cave paintings depicting animals. This cave is known as Lascaux Cave, and it is a network of caves in southwestern France with over 600 cave paintings found on the interior walls of its caves. It is suggested that these paintings were not made all at once and that they were the combined effort of many generations. And although they haven't been able to quite pinpoint a date for each and every one of these paintings, the general consensus is that these paintings are anywhere from 17 to 22,000 years old, which is so cool. There was an amount of time where this cave was actually open to the public for tours, but over time, due to carbon dioxide, heat, humidity, and other contaminants produced by the 1,200 visitors that visited these caves a day, the paintings were essentially disintegrating and were being visibly damaged. Therefore, the cave was closed to the public in 1963. Since then, the paintings have been restored to their original state and a monitoring system has been put in place. It's actually just a baguette holding a door closed. I don't know, I'm sure they've got something amazing. So yeah, unless you're able to travel at least 70 years into the past, you're not going to be seeing these original 22,000-year-old paintings. However, this story does have a bit of a happy ending, because obviously there was demand for these cave tours, and that wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. So what the authorities actually did was create exact replicas of this cave system for people to explore and visit without any risk of the originals being damaged, which is honestly pretty cool. But what isn't cool is snakes. And since 2 out of the 4 entries on this list so far have been on islands, let's add another one to the list and combine the 2. Snakes in an island. You know what that gets you? You're right. Snake Island. No, not the island boy's haircut. Snake Island is an island, I know. And it is also off the coast of Brazil. The island is famous for, of course, its large population of venomous snakes, specifically the golden lancehead pit viper. And what's interesting is that this island is the only known natural home for this breed of snakes. But there is a bit of mystery surrounding this island. How exactly did these snakes get here, and why is there so many of them? It's not called Snake Island because there's a few. It's called Snake Island because it's only inhabited by snakes, and a lot of them at that. The island is roughly 106 acres in area, and is believed to be the home of around 400,000 snakes, although that number more recently has been debated. But if you ask me, I don't think we're getting an accurate head count anytime soon. Point being, there is a lot of snakes on this island. But the question remains, how did these snakes get here? And I hope you brought your tissues, because it's kind of a sad story. Basically, when the Portuguese colonized Brazil, the Portuguese made all of the native Brazilians disown their pet snakes. Obviously outraged, the native Brazilians didn't give up their snakes without a fight, and they banded up all of their snakes and sent them off to sea on a raft, hoping that they would find a better life. after a few days, this raft of about 500,000 snakes washed up ashore on this uninhabited island, and the rest is history. I totally just made all of that up. The real reason why there is so many snakes on this island is much more simple. During the last ice age, this island, which is now 33 kilometers off the coast of Brazil, was actually connected to the mainland. But near the end of the ice age, as water levels started to rise, the snakes essentially became trapped on this island. Their population grew due to a lack of natural predators. Fortunately, these snakes weren't the only animals on the island. There was actually a plethora of ladders. But unfortunately, after a few dangerous games of snakes and ladders, only the snakes remained. I don't know why I'm lying so much in this video, but hopefully you can tell fact from fiction. Sure, there's a lot of snakes on an island, but there's a lot of snakes on a plane too, and people are still on the plane. Why is there not people on this island? Well, similar to North Sentinel Island, Snake Island is off limits to any civilians. The Brazilian Navy claims that this is for the protection of both the snakes and the people that may potentially try to access the island. The only people that are advised to go on the island have to be vetted by the Institute for Biodiversity Conservation, which I'm assuming is no easy task. And if you try to go the other way, well, you'll have to deal with the Brazilian Navy. And similar to North Sentinel Island, if the snakes kill you, the Brazilian Navy is not going to put them in jail. That's crazy that now twice on this list, there is groups of people that are immune to the law simply because they got an island. I wonder if there's any more recent examples of people with islands breaking the law. That's an interesting phenomenon, but let's keep moving. Wait, okay, last thing I'm gonna say about Snake Island. Making fake maps claiming that there is buried treasure on this remote island, when in reality, it's actually just Snake Island, would be a hilarious prank. Not in the modern day, but definitely pirate times, dude. This was a pirate time banger of a prank, guaranteed. You know what? We're on the topic of islands. Last island, one last island for the list. Palette cleanse, we'll go through it quick. Morgan Island. No story, no nothing. Just straight up facts. Morgan Island is also known as Monkey Island. And if you can't guess why it's called that, you may live on Monkey Island. Monkey Island is famous for, of course, its population of free-ranged monkeys. It is completely uninhabited by people, and this island is protected by the Department of Natural Resources and the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which use it for public health research, which unfortunately is basically just animal testing. Boo. Monkey Island, unlike Snake Island, is not naturally occurring, and actually has a very odd origin story. To put it bluntly, there was a lot of monkeys in Puerto Rico that were carrying hepatitis B, and it was becoming so much of a problem that there was frequent outbreaks. So what is the most logical and reasonable next step? Well, according to some people in 1979, the best idea was to capture 1,400 monkeys and relocate them to a remote island in South Carolina. And ladies and gentlemen, Morgan Island, aka Monkey Island. So in case you ever wanted to be surrounded by over 1,000 monkeys with hepatitis, Morgan Island definitely needs to be on your travel wish list. But you don't just want to go to remote islands full of uncontacted tribes or a plethora of dangerous animals. And you don't want to go to rural China. And you don't like the cold, so Norway's out too. Well, if that's the case, then I have one last location for you. And if you're a Reddit meme lord, then you're going to be right at home. This last forbidden location takes us to a salt flat in the middle of Nevada. The salt flat is known as Groom Lake. And what makes this salt flat relevant to this video is what's built on the salt flat. That being a Nevada test and training range. But there's military bases everywhere, so what makes this one so special? This test and training range is home to one of the most popular and highly classified United States Air Force bases, most commonly known as Area 51. Interestingly, Area 51 was never considered a secret base. However, it is the home for some of the most secret and sensitive documents that pertain to military intel in the United States. The origin of the name Area 51 is actually unknown. However, according to the CIA, the proper names for the facility are Homey Airport and Groom Lake. The primary initial purpose of Area 51 was a testing ground for Project Aquatone, the development of the Lockheed U-2, which was one of the most iconic spy planes of all time, and still has a lot of mystery surrounding it, almost 70 years later. Since then, this area has gained a lot more popularity, and due to the secrecy surrounding it, there has been no shortage of questions, mysteries, and conspiracy theories surrounding the happenings of this military base. Obviously, with the most famous examples being its affiliation with aliens. I honestly wish I had more to talk about, but facts about this location are kind of hard to come by, and I don't think I need to explain why a military base with sensitive information is off limits. But I do find it kind of interesting that, although this is a perfect entry for this video, it's a bit of a catch-22. Because for any random civilian, Area 51 is a place you will never even get close to. At least, not alive. But for hundreds of people, this is a place they come every single day. It's their job. But that's a different story. In 2019, there was actually a large movement for people with way too much free time to storm Area 51 to get answers and see an alien for themselves. This movement was heavily meme-based, but was still very real. On the night of the actual event, over 1,500 people showed up at the border of Area 51, primarily partying and enjoying the scenery, although some took it more serious than others. At the end of the event, nobody got in. Surprisingly, nobody died, and 7 people were arrested. It was a mostly peaceful meme, but I'm sure when all of this was gaining traction and popularity online, some government employees were definitely starting to sweat a bit. But speaking of sweat, I do have a confession. I may or may not have gotten really sweaty researching for this video, and I found way more entries than I could ever put in just one video. But luckily for you, I have the ability to make more videos. So if you guys really enjoyed this video and want to see more forbidden locations, then I would be more than happy to make a part 2 and share with you some likely even more interesting, strange, and some downright scary locations that you or anybody else will likely never visit. So if that's something you want, let me know in the comments or leave this video a like, and I'll be sure to get on that. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I learned a lot researching these places, and I hope you guys learned something too. If you're looking for another excuse to keep procrastinating, I recommend checking out this video on screen. It's about what it was like to get rich in every time period, specifically how people would accumulate wealth. It's pretty interesting. I appreciate you guys checking out my silly little video. And as always, trust me, bro.